A collective gasp went through the room. No one had expected a vow so severe. Even Liam was taken aback, his suspicion momentarily replaced by confusion. I laughed internally. Reveal their secret? Why would I do that? How could I ever quench the fire of my hatred if I didn't get to watch them walk willingly into the flames? Not only would I not reveal it, I was about to pour gasoline on the fire. Satisfied, the class turned their attention back to Chloe, showering her with affection and concern. "Don't say that, darling. Of course we have to dote on you," one of them said. "Yeah, enough talk. Let's get the system linked up already." "Right. We link, confirm the years we're giving, and then we can do the radiant ceremony. You'll be back to being our beautiful angel in no time." Chloe beamed, nodding enthusiastically, her eyes shining with triumph. I watched the scene with a detached smirk. The cruelty of a woman scorned is nothing compared to the cruelty of a beloved darling. Just as she was about to speak and initiate the process, I cut her off. "Wait," I shouted. The entire class whipped around, their expressions instantly hostile. "What now, Luna? Are you insane? You're not donating, so why are you still talking? Just shut up and get out. Are you trying to sabotage the linking process? Do you want to kill Chloe indirectly?" Liam looked like he was about to physically throw me out of the room. I held up my hands, feigning peace. "You've all misunderstood me," I said, my voice smooth and placating. "While I don't want to donate my lifespan, I still want to contribute." Liam's eyes narrowed. "Contribute what?" I reached into my bag and pulled out my father's unlimited black Centaurian card, slapping it down on the desk with a sharp crack that echoed in the silent room. "I don't want to give my life," I announced with voice ringing with authority. "But I have money. I'm willing to buy years for our darling Chloe." Chloe's eyes, which had been wary, instantly lit up with a greedy fire. The others just looked confused. I spelled it out for them. "Anyone who donates a year of their life to Chloe gets $50,000 from me. 10 years, you get $500,000. 20 years, a full $1,000,000. The offer is unlimited." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Then I saw a flicker in the eyes of a few students from less affluent families. Their minds were already racing. $50,000 for a year? $500,000 for 10? For kids who worried about student loans and whose parents worked 2 jobs, that kind of money wasn't just life-changing, it was a fantasy. Leo, the poorest kid in our class, was the first to break. His eyes were glued to the black card, a desperate, avaricious light shining in them. "Luna, are you serious?" I nodded, a regal tilt to my head. A lady never goes back on her word. "Deal!" he screamed, scrambling over to Chloe. "Darling Chloe, let's link up, right now. I'll give you 20 years. Even Chloe was stunned, her jaw slack with disbelief. But at Leo's frantic urging, she quickly composed herself and activated the system. A serene, digital female voice, like a high-end virtual assistant, filled the room. "Student Leo Evans has successfully linked. Voluntary donation of 20 years of lifespan to the host has been confirmed." Leo immediately spun around and ran to me, his face flushed and his eyes wild. He held out his shaking hand. I gave him a thin smile and pulled out my phone. A quick call to my private banker was all it took. A few moments later, Leo's phone buzzed. He looked down and his breath hitched. He frantically checked his banking app, his eyes growing wider and wider. $2 million. He was trembling with excitement, the previous resentment in his eyes replaced with something approaching worship. I scanned the stunned faces of my classmates, my voice cutting through the silence like ice. Next. Seeing the $2 million lighting up Leo's banking app was like throwing a match into a tinderbox. The student's shock morphed into a blazing, all-consuming greed. In an instant, a chaotic line formed in front of Chloe, all pretense of noble sacrifice forgotten. This was a marketplace now. Those who had successfully linked and donated immediately came to me to collect their payment. I didn't hold back, transferring the promised amounts with cold efficiency. 15 years, one girl shouted. $750,000. Sent. 25, another yelled. 1.25 million. Sent.
The numbers were staggering. Most offered between 10 and 20 years. Even some of the wealthier kids, whose parents gave them generous allowances, threw in 3 or 5 years. After all, having a few $100,000 of your own before even starting college, that was a level of freedom they couldn't resist. The most shocking of all was Kevin, the athletic jock. He seemed to have absolute faith in his grandfather's prophecy. He strode forward, beaming with confidence. 30 years, he declared. $3 million flowed into his account moments later. Chloe was delirious with joy. She was laughing, a high, giddy sound that was only partially masked by her continued, grateful tears. She looked like she wanted to stand up and sing, but managed to restrain herself. It was hardly surprising. Who would turn down a longer life? At this rate, she was on track to live for centuries. The thought made her tremble with a joy so profound it was almost manic. The last one to link with the system was Liam Finch. Student Liam Finch has successfully linked. Voluntary donation of 1 year of lifespan to the host has been confirmed. The system's announcement caused the entire class to turn and stare at him in disbelief. Liam was famously Chloe's most ardent pursuer, the self-proclaimed captain of her fan club. Yet now, he had given the absolute minimum. "Pay up," he grumbled, walking stiffly over to me and rattling off his account number. I raised an eyebrow. "Pay up? For what?" His face flushed with anger. "What do you mean for what? I gave a year." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "A year? You're unbelievable, Liam. All that big talk, all that posturing about protecting our darling Chloe, and when it comes time to act, you give the least of anyone here." I gestured around the room. "These people," I said, my voice dripping with mock admiration, "put their futures on the line for Chloe. I've nearly maxed out my daily transfer limit paying for their loyalty. And you? You offer one single, painless year?" I leaned in, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was still loud enough for everyone to hear. "It seems your devotion to Chloe was just an act all along. You truly are a selfish, petty man." Every word was a calculated strike. This coward. If not for him leading the charge in our first life, I wouldn't have died in such agony. This time, I wouldn't miss a single opportunity to make him squirm. As my words sank in, the mood of the class shifted. Even Chloe looked at Liam with a new, undisguised contempt. "Luna's right," said a student, clutching his phone as if it were a holy relic. 1 year and he wants to get paid? Does he have no shame? "Seriously," another chimed in. "He's always bossing us around, telling us to take care of our darling Chloe, but when it's his turn, he chickens out. Pathetic." "You know," a girl added thoughtfully, looking at me with newfound respect, "I think we might have misunderstood Luna all along. She was willing to spend tens of millions for Chloe. That's real loyalty. Come to think of it, weren't most of our old arguments with her started by you, Liam?" The people who had taken my money were now my staunchest defenders. Of course they were. Hearing the muttering around him, he looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. He couldn't fight back. He couldn't believe how quickly everyone had turned on him. He stumbled over to Chloe, desperate. "Darling Chloe, don't listen to that bitch. You know I've always been true to you. You know it." Suddenly, the system's serene voice cut through the tension. "Congratulations, host. You have received a total of 587 years of lifespan." The air froze. Everyone fell silent, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. 587 years. The number hung in the air, heavy and immense. The students looked at Chloe, their eyes now shining with a different light. It was no longer just adoration. It was envy, raw, burning envy, the kind of emotion that curdles goodwill into resentment. I stood back and watched, a contemptuous smile playing on my lips. After envy, I knew what came next. Greed. I wondered, was Chloe still the darling of the class now? She must have sensed the shift before she forced a bright smile. "Everyone, I have some great news to share," she announced. "The system told me that after helping me extend my life, it will randomly select one person from our class to be the next host within a month." The classroom immediately erupted in excited chatter. They were like puppets, and she was their master. No one doubted her for a second. It was as if each of them had been injected with a stimulant, their faces flushing as they imagined themselves being the chosen one. Seeing that she had stabilized the situation, Chloe let out a quiet sigh of relief. She was good, I had to admit, a masterful manipulator.
The most pathetic person in the room now was Liam Finch. He had lost a year of his life, received no money, and was now an object of ridicule. As I turned to leave, he could only glare at my back, grinding his teeth in impotent rage. The class, caught up in a whirlwind of sudden wealth and heady dreams, dispersed in a cacophony of laughter and excited chatter, already making plans for their millions. "Luna, wait!" Liam's voice stopped me as I reached the doorway. I turned, my face a mask of indifference. "What is it?" He closed the distance between us, his eyes boring into mine, searching for something. "You've been reborn too, haven't you?" he asked, his voice low and intense. I arched an eyebrow. "Reborn? Liam, are you reading too many fantasy novels? I have no idea what you're talking about." My feigned innocence seemed to throw him into disarray. He was a reincarnate, yes. His greatest desire in this life was to ensure Chloe survived. But my actions, actively funding the life-donating frenzy, were the polar opposite of my strategy in the first timeline. It helped Chloe, yes, but it filled him with a deep, gnawing unease. He remembered the text message I had shown everyone in our past life, the one from Chloe that explicitly said a year of life cost an organ. He had to wonder if it was true, and if my actions now were some elaborate, twisted form of revenge. That's why, to be safe, he had only dared to donate a single year. "All right then," I said coolly, cutting through his turbulent thoughts. "From now on, don't speak to me. A cheapskate like you isn't worthy of being my classmate, and you certainly don't have the right to dote on our darling Chloe with the rest of us." I deliberately mimicked the arrogant, condescending tone he used to use, savoring the way his face contorted in rage. I didn't spare him another glance. I couldn't care less about the hatred brewing in his eyes. Just outside the school gates, the gleaming black sedan and the two imposing bodyguards my father had assigned to me were waiting. In this life, my survival was paramount. Before these people met their doom, my bodyguards would be with me every step of the way. Just then, my phone rang. It was my father. "Luna, sweetheart," he chuckled, his voice warm and kind. "Your account flagged a series of rather large transactions. Did you spend over $60 million on something?" My heart warmed at the sound of his voice. Thinking of my brutal death in the last life, a genuine wave of emotion washed over me, and I put on a playful, spoiled tone. "Daddy, I was playing a little game with my friends, and I lost." "Oh, was that all?" He laughed, completely unconcerned. "No problem. I'll have another $100 million transferred to your personal account in a bit. Have fun, sweetheart." 2 nights later, under a sliver of a moon, a large school bus rumbled into the grounds of an abandoned elementary school deep in the countryside. One by one, the students climbed out, carefully carrying Chloe, who was dressed in a pure white dress as if she were a sacrificial princess. "Come on, darling Chloe. Let's get started. It's almost time to witness the miracle. I can't believe we managed to sneak out. We have the college entrance exams tomorrow. I need to get back and study after this." Yeah, but more importantly, who do you think the system will pick as the next host? I'm so nervous." "What's the rush? Our darling said the system needs a month to observe. Just be on your best behavior." I watched from a distance, parked on a hill overlooking the scene, a faint, cold smile on my lips. The system will choose a new host? Even a dog wouldn't believe the words that came out of Chloe's mouth. Soon, everyone except for me had formed a circle with Chloe at her center. She was trembling with excitement. The serene digital voice of the system echoed in the night. "The radiance ceremony will now commence." As the words faded, a brilliant white light erupted from Chloe's body, expanding outward in a circular wave. In a flash, it enveloped every single student in the circle. I saw Liam's face tighten with anxiety, and my smile widened. He was probably still worried about that text message. Then the strange part happened. The wave of white light, after touching each student, rapidly receded. But as it returned to Chloe, it was no longer pure. It was now visibly streaked with crimson veins, like threads of blood being pulled back to their source. The amount varied from person to person. The most came from Kevin, the jock. The least came from Liam Finch. My eyes narrowed. I was beginning to understand. The blood-streaked light flowed back into Chloe's body in a single, silent rush. In that instant, her pale, sickly complexion vanished. She didn't just look better. She stood up from her wheelchair. Not only was her face rosy and her posture perfect, but her entire aura, her very presence seemed to have been upgraded. Even I, a daughter of privilege who had been pampered my entire life, felt a pang of inadequacy in her presence. It seemed this life donation was far more than just giving away a few years.
She's healed. Our darling Chloe is healed. It's a real miracle. Oh my God, Chloe, you're stunning. You're too beautiful to be real. I don't think even movie stars can compare. The class rushed forward, swarming around her. The air filled with joyous laughter and chatter, as if they had all been transported back to the carefree days before her diagnosis. Only I remained apart, my brow furrowed. I knew it wasn't this simple. The students showed no outward signs of anything wrong, but I have always believed that the world is a balanced scale. Where there is a gain, there must be a loss. Liam, his face flushed with relief and excitement, ran over to me, his voice dripping with triumphant scorn. "See? You were lying in the last life. You're still the same evil-hearted bitch, making things up to hurt people. We treated our darling Chloe so well, why would she ever hurt us?" He slapped his own chest and arms, showing off his perfectly intact body, bursting with pride. For 2 days, he had lived in mortal fear of becoming disabled. Now, the weight was lifted. "Congratulations," I replied blandly, then turned and walked back toward the Maybach waiting for me at the edge of the woods. I sat in the plush leather seat of the Maybach, my eyes fixed on the distant scene. Chloe was now the center of a jubilant festival, singing and dancing with an ethereal grace she never possessed before. The cheers of my former classmates echoed through the night. Finally, after more than an hour of celebration, they all began piling back onto the bus, their voices still buzzing with excitement. The bus rumbled back to life and started down the winding country road. "Follow them," I told my driver. "Keep a safe distance." The Maybach pulled out silently, its engine a low purr, and trailed the bus like a shadow. The further we drove, the tighter my brow furrowed. As we navigated a sharp turn, my driver, a seasoned professional named Arthur, suddenly spoke up. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice calm but alert. "When I drove you here earlier, I saw a temporary warning sign up ahead for potential rock slides. I'll accelerate through that section to be safe. You should hold on tight. Perhaps you should text your classmates and warn them." My head snapped up. My eyes, which had been lost in thought, suddenly flashed with a terrifying understanding. "Stop the car. Right here." Arthur brought the Maybach to a smooth halt. I stared intently at the bus ahead, its taillights glowing red in the darkness. Under the powerful beams of my own car's headlights, I could make out the scene. A yellow triangular sign reading "Rock Slide Area" was hammered into the dirt by the side of the road. Behind it, a few loose stones and clumps of dirt littered the asphalt. To the left was a steep, muddy slope. To the right, a pitch-black ravine that seemed to swallow the light. The bus continued forward, its passengers still singing. And then it happened. A deep, groaning roar, like the world was tearing itself apart, ripped through the night. I watched, mesmerized, as a huge section of the mountainside to the left simply gave way. A torrent of mud, rock, and entire trees cascaded downwards. Crunch! Boulders the size of small cars slammed into the side of the bus. The vehicle, in a horrifying moment of slow motion, was lifted from the road, its frame groaning and twisting. It tipped, hung in the air for a fraction of a second, and then tumbled over the edge, rolling down into the black abyss like a discarded toy. So that's how it works. A silent, hysterical laugh bubbled up inside me. I opened the car door, the cold night air hitting my face, and called out calmly to my driver, "Arthur, call 911. The bus carrying my classmates just went into the ravine." The news sent a shockwave through the entire state. A school bus filled with honor students on the eve of their college entrance exams had fallen into a ravine. The story was unbelievable, a tragedy of horrific proportions. Rescue teams were on site within an hour. A flood of reporters, bloggers, and news vans followed, turning the remote location into a chaotic media circus. Parents, hearing the news, rushed to the scene, their frantic cries and wails echoing through the mountains. The principal and teachers arrived, their faces ashen with shock. The darkness made the rescue effort a nightmare. But thankfully, the ravine wasn't a sheer drop. There was still a chance of finding survivors. Social media platforms immediately started live streaming the rescue operation. The story shot to the #1 trending topic nationwide. Time crawled by. Then a cheer erupted from the rescue crew. "We've got one! A survivor!" The first person they brought up was a girl. She was completely, miraculously unharmed. I looked closer. Of course, it was Chloe Vance. She was weeping, her face a mess of dirt and tears, but she still managed to look tragically beautiful. "Don't worry about me," she screamed at her rescuers, her voice raw with anguish. "Please save my friends first, please." That one sentence sent the live stream chat into a frenzy of praise and admiration.
What a selfless, kind soul, thinking of her friends even at a time like this. Not only is she kind, she's gorgeous, more beautiful than any celebrity. I'm officially a fan, praying the other students are as lucky as she is. But life, as they would soon learn, is not a fairy tale. The second person to be rescued was Liam Finch. As soon as they pulled him onto solid ground, his eyes fell upon his own left leg. His pupils instantly dilated, and a guttural, inhuman moan escaped his lips. He looked like a man who had lost his entire soul. Hiding in the shadows, I allowed myself a small, silent laugh. His left leg was a mangled ruin of bone and flesh, a horrifying, bloody mess. It would have to be amputated. The livestream comments filled with sympathy. "Oh, that poor boy, I can't bear to look. That's tragic." But no words of pity could soothe Liam. Unable to cope with the reality of his new life, he passed out on the spot. As time wore on, more of my classmates were brought up from the wreckage. Every single one of them was horribly injured. Broken arms, shattered legs, blinded eyes, crushed limbs. Not one was unscathed. The number of body parts they had lost corresponded exactly to the number of years they had so eagerly donated. One could only imagine the state of those who had given 20 or 30 years. Meanwhile, Chloe was surrounded by a swarm of reporters. Her tears never stopped flowing. Every time another maimed student was carried past, she would cry out their name in a heart-wrenching sob, a performance that moved everyone watching to tears. "Luna Hayes!" Chloe's sudden cry cut through my cold satisfaction. "Luna, you're okay? Oh, thank God!" She stumbled towards me, her act flawless, and threw her arms around me in a tight, sobbing hug. "I almost forgot," she cried for all to hear. "You didn't take the bus with us. That's why you didn't fall." Everyone's attention snapped to me. They saw my clean clothes, my calm expression, and then the gleaming Maybach parked behind me. Their expressions turned strange.
She didn't take the bus, so she didn't fall. She has money, so she takes a private car instead of riding with her friends. My face showed none of the grief that was wrenching Chloe's features. In that moment, a new narrative began to form in their minds. Conspiracy theories started to bubble up in the live stream chat. Some even began to wonder if the crash was really an accident at all. Chloe's ploy to drag me into the spotlight was obvious, but I remained perfectly calm. "Chloe, stop crying," I said, my voice cool and even. "Tears won't save them. I've already contacted my father. All of our classmates will be transported to my family's hospital for treatment completely free of charge. My father has already mobilized the best medical resources in the state. We will do everything in our power to help every single one of them." Chloe's sobs hitched in her throat. The people around us, reporters and parents alike, looked at me with new eyes. All the suspicion vanished. They were right. Crying accomplished nothing. Money, action, and a genuine willingness to help, that's what mattered. My reputation soared. Without another word, I turned and walked away. They were beginning to understand. This Luna Hayes girl was cold on the outside, but she had a heart of gold. Chloe could only watch me go, her heart filled with a bitter frustration. All she could do now was cry. It was the only card she had left to play. The next morning, on the day of the college entrance exams, a horde of reporters swarmed the entrance to the testing center. Chloe, her eyes red and swollen, gave a powerful, impromptu press conference. "I'm in so much pain," she choked out, fighting back tears. "I just wish everything that happened last night was just a terrible nightmare. My friends, they should be standing here with me right now. But no matter what, I have to walk this path for them. Please," she looked directly into the cameras, "pray for my friends and lend me a little bit of your strength. I will carry the light of all of us and illuminate that exam room. Thank you." As she finished, a round of spontaneous applause broke out. I stood in the middle of the crowd, silently observing her moving performance. A small, humorless smile touched my lips. Then, I became the first person to turn away and walk into the exam hall to face the most important moment of my academic life. At that exact moment, my family's hospital was holding a press conference of its own. The news was grim. "It is with the deepest regret," the chief of surgery announced, his face grave, "that we must inform you that over half of the students involved in the accident did not survive their injuries." The public wasn't entirely surprised. The images from the rescue had shown how grievously wounded many of the victims were. Their bodies were simply too damaged. Even a miracle couldn't have saved them. Of course, these were the students who had donated the most years of their lives. The price they paid was the most absolute. After the exams, Chloe's fame skyrocketed. She started a TikTok account and her follower count exploded, gaining millions of new fans every day. She was crowned the nation's most beautiful scholar, an angel on earth, and a goddess of kindness. High on her new status, she decided to film her first official video at the hospital. Her plan was to capture a touching reunion with her beloved friends, cementing her public image. She stepped into the first hospital room, camera rolling. It belonged to Alex, our former class academic monitor. He screamed the moment he saw her, "Get out!" Alex was blind in one eye and all 4 of his limbs had been amputated. He was living in a constant state of agony. "Get out, you monster!" he shrieked. "If it wasn't for your damned radiance ceremony, would I be like this? Would my eyes be gone? Would my arms and legs be gone? My entire life is ruined. Do you understand that? Ruined!" Chloe froze, her face a mask of shock. She quickly recovered, forcing tears into her eyes. "Alex, it was an accident. A rock slide is a natural disaster. Nobody wanted this to happen. I'm your darling Chloe, remember? Why would you say something so cruel? You're making me so sad." The veins on Alex's forehead bulged. His remaining eye was bloodshot with pure hatred. "Darling, my ass, get the hell out of here before I drag myself over there and bite you to death." Chloe had no choice but to stumble out of the room. Once in the hallway, a flash of malice crossed her face, quickly replaced by her practiced look of sorrow as she moved to the next room. She couldn't believe it. Surely not all of them hated her. It was the system that caused this, not her. She stepped into the second room and was immediately hit in the head with a water glass thrown by a girl who now only had one arm. Blood trickled down her forehead. In that moment, Chloe finally understood. This was human nature. They were all blaming her because it all started with her and her ceremony. She was no longer their darling. Fine, so what? She could still be the internet's darling. Even so, the 3 years she had spent being worshipped by them left a bitter taste in her mouth. She couldn't let it go completely. She decided to seek out the one person she knew would remain loyal, her most blindly devoted follower, Liam Finch. But the boy she found in that hospital room terrified her to her core. Liam just sat there, propped up against his pillows, staring at her with cold, dead eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He looked like a living corpse. His chilling silence was more frightening than all the others' violent rage. Chloe couldn't bring herself to speak. She turned and fled. I watched her retreating back from the end of the hall, a slight smile on my face. Then I walked into Liam Finch's room. "You killed me in our last life," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. It was a statement, not a question. "We were both reborn." "So it would seem," I replied, my smile widening. I leaned closer to his bed. I whispered, "Tell me, Liam, what do you think the chances are that you'll be reborn a third time?" Instantly, a flicker of desperate hope ignited in Liam's dead eyes. His gaze shot towards me sharp as a dagger, radiating a palpable killing intent. But then he saw the 2 large bodyguards standing silently behind me, and the light in his eyes died out. He knew, in this life, he would never be able to touch me. But then, an idea seemed to take root. His gaze shifted, looking past me and towards the hallway where Chloe had just disappeared. I saw the look and chuckled softly. Time passed. 6 months later, a shocking piece of news dominated the headlines. Chloe Vance, the beautiful top scholar, the angel on earth, had vanished without a trace. In a derelict warehouse deep in the same desolate mountains where my first life ended, Chloe Vance was gagged with a filthy rag and tied up like an animal for slaughter. She had been thrown onto the cold, damp concrete floor, her eyes wide with the terror that went beyond words. Surrounding her was a circle of figures that looked like they had crawled out of hell. They were my surviving classmates, and leading their charge, leaning heavily on a crutch, was Liam Finch. "So, Liam," rasped Alex, the boy with no limbs, his voice a grotesque parody of his once confident tone. He was strapped into a motorized wheelchair. "According to you, in our last life, we killed Luna to avenge Chloe, and Chloe knew. She knew donating a year of life would cost us a piece of our bodies, and she let us do it anyway. And Luna, being reborn just like you, paid us millions of dollars just so she could watch us destroy ourselves. She bought our lives as revenge for what we did to her." "I believe him," a girl with a scarred face and a missing arm whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Everything he said matches up. I gave 3 years, I lost an ear, an arm, and a leg. The math is perfect. I gave 5, and I lost all 4 limbs and an eye. It all fits." Liam, his face a mask of crazed desperation, looked around at the broken assembly. He said, "If you all believe me, then why not bet on one more roll of the dice?"
What kind of vet? "In our last life, we killed Luna, and she and I were reborn," Liam explained, his eyes blazing with a feverish light. "So in this life, if we kill Chloe, maybe we'll all get to be reborn again. And if I come back a third time, I'll know everything from the start. I'll be able to protect all of you."
A horrifying cackling laughter echoed through the warehouse, the sound of souls that had already been damned. "Deal! I'm in!" Alex shouted. "This life is already over. Living is worse than dying. We have to make this bet." "Yes! Kill Chloe first!" the one-armed girl screamed. "I want my life back. I want to start over." Chloe thrashed on the floor, muffled screams of pure terror coming from behind her gag. "She gets to live for over 500 years while we rot like this?" A boy missing his legs spat on the ground. "If she doesn't die, who does? Come on, everyone, let's do it. I can't wait any longer." With that, a tide of broken bodies began to move. They crawled, they hopped, they dragged themselves across the floor. More than 20 grotesque figures, twisted and mangled, moved as one. A slow, unstoppable wave of vengeance crawling towards the weeping girl at the center of the room. Chloe's eyes rolled back in her head from sheer terror. From a safe location miles away, I watched the entire scene unfold on my phone, broadcast from a microcamera I'd had planted in the warehouse weeks ago. I, Luna Hayes, am a model, law-abiding citizen. When a group of disturbed individuals kidnaps and murders someone on property I recently purchased, calling the police is my only responsible choice. My former classmates were all apprehended. With the video evidence and their own crazed confessions, the case was open and shut. Their fate was sealed by the justice system. I didn't care what kind of debates Chloe's death sparked online. That was no longer my concern. My only remaining interest was visiting my dear, resilient classmates in prison. The first person I went to see was Liam Finch. As I sat across from him, he stared at me with an ocean of hatred in his one good eye. Just as he opened his mouth to curse me, a familiar, serene voice sounded off inside his head, a voice only he could hear. "Student Liam Finch has successfully linked. Forced lifespan extraction by host initiated. 50 years. Effect will commence in 1 month." "Ah!" Liam screamed, a raw panic sound of pure animal fear. His face went bone white and he began to tremble uncontrollably. A dark stain spread across the front of his prison jumpsuit as his bladder gave way. I smiled gently and pointed a finger at my own chest. I said, "The system seems to have chosen me." I said softly, my voice filled with a sweet, terrible poison. "It appears it has received an upgrade too." The moment my words registered, Liam collapsed into a quivering, whimpering heap on the floor, gibbering incoherently. I stood up, smoothed down my dress, and turned to leave. I still had other friends to visit. The last thing I remembered from my first life was the jeering laughter of my classmates as their fists and feet rained down on me. "You killed our darling Chloe," they screamed. "Now you pay the price." When I opened my eyes again, it was to the sound of those same classmates promising to give their lives for her. When I opened my eyes again, the phantom pains vanished, replaced by the fluorescent hum of Northwood Academy's most advanced lecture hall. I was back, reborn into the exact moment my personal hell began. On the podium at the front of the room stood Chloe Vance, our class darling, looking fragile enough to be shattered by a harsh word. Her eyes, usually sparkling with life, were red-rimmed and filled with a carefully practiced despair. She had just delivered her bombshell, a terminal diagnosis, and with it, a desperate, impossible plea. "The doctors, they can't do anything, but I found something. It's called the Aura Link system. It lets me share your life force. Please," she begged, her gaze sweeping across the room of enraptured faces. "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just afraid of never seeing you guys again. If each of you just linked with me and gave me 1 single year of your lifespan, I could live. We could graduate together, go to college, grow old together. I could be your darling forever." The class, full of privileged, naive teenagers, erupted. A year of life seemed like nothing, an abstraction. "Of course, Chloe, don't be silly. 1 year is nothing," Mark, the captain of the football team, puffed out his chest. "You can count on me." "Yeah, we've got 50 people in this class besides you. That's 50 years. You'll live a whole normal life," another girl chimed in. "1 year? I'll give you 2. Our darling has to live to be 100, a boy shouted, and a chorus of agreement followed. "Me too. I'll give 2. The athletic vice president, a jock named Kevin, whose grandfather had once read his fortune, boomed. "My grandpa said I'm destined to live to be 100. I'll give you 5 years, Chloe." Chloe's face was a mask of overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you, everyone," she whispered, tears streaming down her perfect cheeks. "After the radiance ceremony, I'll live a good life. I'll sing for you, dance for you. I'll be your darling forever." They didn't know. They couldn't possibly know. The Auralink system was a lie. Its true name was the Life Sacrifice System. And the price for 1 year of life wasn't a number on a calendar. It was a randomly chosen organ, a pound of your own flesh. In my past life, I thought the whole thing was insane. I told my parents, who told the other parents. On the night of the ceremony, every student was locked in their room. No one came. Chloe died in her hospital bed, and my classmates, driven mad with grief, kidnapped me and tortured me to death. This time, I would not make the same mistake. As the room buzzed with heroic promises, all eyes eventually fell on me. I was standing silently by my desk, my expression unreadable. It was Liam Finch who called me out. "Hey, Luna, what about you?" he sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "Everyone's so fired up. Don't tell me you're not willing to spare just 1 year for Chloe." Liam, the scholarship kid my family sponsored, the boy I had taken a special interest in, whose gratitude had curdled into a possessive sense of authority over me. He thought my kindness was a crush, and no matter how many times I corrected him, he refused to believe it. He was the one who led the mob that killed me. The sight of him made my skin crawl. Before I could answer, Chloe intervened with her signature toxic sweetness. "Please, everyone, don't pressure Luna," she said, her voice soft and wounded. "Everyone has their own thoughts. Even if we don't agree, we should respect her choice. It is a year of her life, after all. It's normal not to want to give it away." She bit her lip, a perfect picture of a martyr. And just like that, with those few understanding words, she painted me as the villain. The room turned on me. "Well, are you in or out? She's a rich girl. Her life is probably worth more than ours. Look at her, acting all high and mighty. There's no way she'd help our darling. Dream on." "Whatever. We don't need her. Chloe will live a long life with our years. Just get out of here, Luna. You're an eyesore." That last line made the corner of my mouth twitch into a smile. The show was about to begin, and this time, I was the director. I let their insults wash over me, my silence serving as my confirmation. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker of disappointment in Chloe's gaze. It seemed she was genuinely annoyed that I wouldn't offer up a piece of myself. She had always been jealous of my family's wealth, constantly engineering little social dramas to isolate me from the others. Under the glow of her class-darling halo, I had become the resident outcast. Just as the class was ready to dismiss me and move on, Liam Finch raised his hand, his expression deadly serious. "Wait," he commanded, and the room fell silent. "Even if Luna doesn't donate, that's fine. But what if she tells our parents? They'd lock us all up for sure. We would lose Chloe forever." A wave of realization and panic swept through the students. They instantly formed a loose circle around me, their expressions turning from simple disdain to suspicion. Even Chloe, for all her acting, looked genuinely worried. I met Liam's gaze with a cold smile. "So, you were reborn too." In our first life, this scene never happened. He had been just another one of Chloe's fawning admirers, but this time, he was thinking ahead, trying to prevent the failure of our previous timeline. Good. That would make his eventual suffering all the more exquisite. In my first life, after Chloe died, she had sent me one final damning text message. "You bitch, it was all your fault. All they had to give was an organ. It wasn't even life-threatening, but you had to ruin it. Now that I'm dead, they'll make sure you join me. Ha ha ha." I showed that message to everyone. No one believed me. They called me a monster for slandering the dead and beat me even harder. I pushed the burning memory down. "So, what do you want from me?" I asked, my voice flat. Liam was ready. "Make a vow, an unbreakable one. Swear it, and we'll be satisfied." The class murmured in agreement. At this stage, before losing their precious darling, they weren't the bloodthirsty animals they would become. They were still just scared kids. "Fine," I said without hesitation, nodding once. I raised my right hand. The room watched transfixed. "I, Luna Hayes, swear on my family's name and my own future," I began, my voice clear and steady. "If I breathe a single word of what happened here today to anyone outside this room, may my parents lose everything they've ever built. And may I made a fate so agonizing it would make death feel like a mercy.